You know how some people test your love just to see how far you'll go for them? Mine tested me by inviting the one person who knew exactly how to destroy me, his ex. I still remember that night like it's etched in my skin. The way the air felt heavy before she even arrived, like the universe already knew something was about to break. I didn't, though. I was still trying to convince myself that it was just dinner, just an innocent evening. But deep down, my heart was whispering something my mind didn't want to hear. This isn't about dinner, this is about power. You ever get that feeling when you know something's wrong, but you smile anyway, pretending everything's fine? That was me, sitting there, trying to act calm while my stomach tied itself into knots. I kept replaying his words in my head. I just thought it'd be nice if you met her. We're friends now. I don't want you to feel insecure. Insecure? He used that word like it was a flaw. But how do you explain to someone that it's not insecurity, it's intuition? I knew that woman still had a hold on him. Not because of what she said, but because of how he said her name. The truth is, when a man talks about his ex too often, he's not over her, he's trying to prove to himself that he is. So, I told him okay. I said, sure, invite her. My voice didn't even sound like mine. It sounded like someone brave, someone pretending not to care. But inside? I was already breaking. The hours before she came felt like waiting for a storm I couldn't stop. I kept fixing my hair, changing my dress, wiping invisible dust off the counter, trying to make everything perfect. Not for her. Not even for him. But for me. Because if I was going to sit across from the woman who once had everything I now called mine, I needed to look unshakable. The doorbell rang right when I'd finally caught my breath. And I swear, the sound of it still echoes in my mind sometimes. She walked in wearing the kind of confidence you can't buy, that quiet, dangerous kind. Her perfume filled the room before her smile did. And when she hugged him, she didn't just hug him. She reminded me, silently, that she knew him before I did. Before I even existed in his world. I stood there, watching them laugh, their eyes meeting in that familiar, unspoken language that lovers never really forget. And all I could think was, why did he want me to see this? Was it to prove something? To make me jealous? Or was it to watch how much pain I could swallow without saying a word? They say jealousy screams. But that night, mine was quiet, hidden behind polite smiles and small talk. It sat heavy in my chest, pressing against every breath, every laugh I faked just to seem okay. And the whole time, he looked at me like he was studying me, like I was the experiment and she was the control. Like he wanted to see which of us would crack first. If you've ever been in love with someone who enjoys testing you, you'll understand what I mean when I say, there's a special kind of pain that comes from being set up to lose. Because it's not just betrayal. It's humiliation wrapped in care. It's someone looking you in the eyes while handing you the match that'll burn you. That night, I learned something I'll never forget: jealousy isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the silence that hurts the most. The kind that lingers after the laughter fades, after the door closes, after you realize you were never meant to win. Subscribe to Stories by TEE, because sometimes, the stories we tell ourselves about love are the ones that break us the most. Soft instrumental hums beneath the voice, calm but slightly tense, like the feeling before a storm. The tone remains intimate, reflective, and deeply human. I used to think love was supposed to feel safe. You know, like home, the kind of home that smells like Sunday mornings and sounds like laughter echoing through the walls. That's what Ryan used to be to me. My home. My calm. My person. But lately, our home has started to feel different. We've been together for 2 years, and somewhere between the good mornings and the good nights, something shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, almost invisible, like watching a candle burn itself out one quiet evening. He still kissed me before leaving for work, but his lips barely touched mine. He still said I love you, but it started to sound more like a habit than a feeling. And the worst part? I didn't even know when it started to change. Our apartment used to be filled with warmth, little reminders of who we were. The Polaroids on the fridge. The half-burned candle that still smelled like cinnamon. The cozy blanket we fought over during movie nights. But now, even the air feels different. Colder. Quieter. Like the walls were keeping secrets we hadn't said out loud yet. I'd catch him staring at his phone, smiling faintly, his thumb scrolling, and I didn't even have to ask. I knew. Because every time I'd ask, "Who's that?" he'd answer with the same soft laugh that used to make me melt. "Oh, just Maya." She sent a funny meme. Maya. The name used to mean nothing to me. But lately, it's been echoing in my mind, louder each time he says it. You ever notice how a name can start to sound heavier the more you hear it? Like it carries weight and history. At first, I told myself it was fine. She was his past. I was his present. I had nothing to worry about. That's what I wanted to believe, that I was secure, mature, understanding. But then, the small things started to change. He'd bring her up in random conversations. "Oh, Maya used to love this restaurant. Maya's the one who told me about that series." Or the worst one, "You and Maya would actually get along. You're both so alike." I'd laugh it off, pretending it didn't sting, but inside, it was like a quiet cut every time. Because women know. We always know. We know when a man isn't fully with us anymore. When his attention drifts, when his mind wanders, when the laughter he shares with someone else sounds different, freer. We can feel it before he even admits it to himself. And Ryan, he had started to pull away in ways that were impossible to ignore. He'd get distant after phone calls. Forget little details about our plans. He'd leave the room when messages came in. When I finally asked him if something was wrong, he smiled, that same disarming smile that always made me drop my guard. "Babe, you're overthinking again. Maya and I are friends. That's all." Friends. Funny how that word can sound so innocent, yet so dangerous at the same time. Because when someone says just friends, but their eyes tell a different story, you learn that friendship can sometimes be the perfect disguise. Still, I stayed quiet. Because I didn't want to seem jealous. I didn't want to give him a reason to think I didn't trust him. But the silence started eating at me. Every laugh they shared online. Every story that started with her name. Every time he said, "You'd like her." And then, one evening, out of nowhere, he said it. "Hey, guess what? Maya's in town. I thought it'd be nice if she came over for dinner." I swear, time froze for a second. He said it so casually, like he was suggesting we order pizza. No hesitation. No second thought. I looked at him, searching his face for a reason, a hint, anything that would tell me he was joking. But he wasn't. He was serious. His tone was calm, almost testing. And in that silence between us, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about her. It was about me. He wanted to see how I'd react. How much I'd bend before I'd break. If I'd get jealous, or worse, if I'd pretend not to. I could feel the weight of my heartbeat in my chest, heavy and uneven. I wanted to scream, "Why her? Why now? Why me?" But all that came out was a quiet, "Oh, that's nice." And just like that, I became part of his little experiment. I spent the rest of that day trying to convince myself I was okay. Telling myself it was just dinner. Just a test I could pass by acting calm, collected, unaffected. But deep down, I wasn't okay. Because sometimes, curiosity doesn't come from wanting to know the truth, it comes from wanting to prove that your fears are wrong. And that night, I wanted so badly to be wrong. So when he said she'd be joining us for dinner, my stomach turned, not from fear, but from something darker. Curiosity. The kind that keeps you awake, wondering what you'll find when the truth finally walks through your door. He said it so casually. Like it was nothing. We were sitting on the couch, The same spot where he used to pull me close just to trace lazy circles on my back while we talked about everything and nothing. But that night, his tone was different. Detached. His eyes weren't searching for mine, they were somewhere else. He took a sip of his drink, cleared his throat, and said, "Hey. I invited Maya over for dinner tomorrow. Just to clear the air. I think it's time you two met, so you can see there's nothing between us." At first, I thought I didn't hear him right. Maya. His ex. The woman whose name had become a quiet ghost in our home. My heart skipped. Not in the sweet, fluttering kind of way, but like a car missing a gear. He looked at me, waiting for a reaction. And I gave him one I'd practiced my whole life, calm. I smiled. Small. Polite. "Oh, okay. That's nice of you." But inside? My thoughts were a storm. Why her? Why now? And why did I have to prove I wasn't threatened by someone he once loved? That night, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I was trying to decide which version of myself to be, the understanding girlfriend who trusted her man, or the woman who could already feel another woman's shadow creeping into her space. I went with the first. Because love, real love, or at least what I thought was love, makes you want to believe in the best version of the person you love, even when they start showing you the worst. The next evening, I lit candles, set the table, opened the wine he liked best. Everything looked perfect. Almost too perfect. But my hands? They were shaking. And I didn't even realize I'd sprayed on that perfume, his favorite. The same one he once said reminded him of her. The doorbell rang. And I swear my heartbeat stopped for a moment. When I opened the door, she was there, Maya. Tall. Elegant. Effortlessly confident. Wearing a black dress that fit her like a secret she knew I couldn't compete with. And the scent that followed her inside? The exact perfume I was wearing. She smiled, the kind of smile that wasn't friendly, it was sharp, like a blade wrapped in honey. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, and then she said, "You must be the new her." The new her. Not Elena. Not Ryan's girlfriend. Just a replacement. I wanted to say something witty, something that would make her feel the sting she'd just given me. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled back. Because when a woman wants to protect her heart, sometimes she hides behind grace. Dinner started awkwardly but turned into something else entirely. Maya was magnetic. Every word she said pulled Ryan's attention back to her. She laughed, loud, carefree, and every time she did, he looked at her like he was remembering something only they shared. She told stories. About trips they'd taken. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. Moments that once belonged to them. And I sat there, nodding, smiling, pretending to laugh at jokes that weren't funny to me. At one point, she mentioned a song. "Oh my God, remember that night in Malibu? That playlist you made for me, what was it called again?" And Ryan, my Ryan, chuckled softly and said, "Yeah. Nights we'll never forget." I felt something crack inside me. Not loud. Not visible. Just a quiet, sinking realization that maybe I'd already lost him before she even walked through that door. Under the table, my fingers were trembling. I gripped the fabric of my dress so hard that my knuckles turned white. But my face? It stayed calm. Because that's what we do, right? We smile through humiliation, hoping love will notice and reward our patience. At one point, Maya poured herself another glass of wine and leaned back, eyes glinting with that cruel kind of amusement that only women who've already won tend to have. "You've got a nice place," she said. "Looks like you've kept some of our old decorations." Ryan smiled, clueless. "Oh yeah, that vase? Remember when we bought it from that little shop downtown?" My stomach turned. That vase. The one sitting by the window. He told me he bought it at a flea market. I'd believed him. And in that moment, I realized, I didn't just inherit his love. I inherited their memories. Still, I kept smiling. Because I wasn't ready to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I told myself I could handle it. That I could rise above her games. That this was just a test, one I could pass with grace. But what I didn't know was that I was already losing. Not to her. Not even to him. I was losing to my own silence. Because silence, when it's full of pain, doesn't protect you. It eats you. Slowly. And that night, as I cleared the table and watched her lipstick stain his wine glass, I knew something had shifted. Something I couldn't undo. Subscribe to Stories by T, where we uncover the quiet heartbreaks, the betrayals we never saw coming, and the lessons we learned too late. You know that moment when you're surrounded by people, yet you feel completely invisible? That's what that dinner turned into for me. Maya's voice filled every corner of the room, soft, confident, dripping with that fake sweetness women like her mastered so well. Every word she spoke was a knife dipped in sugar. And Ryan? He kept glancing between us, this faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, like he was watching a scene he'd secretly scripted. I sat there, smiling like a mannequin, nodding at jokes that weren't funny, pretending I didn't see how easily she commanded his attention. Her laughter was loud enough to echo. Mine felt like a whisper no one heard. At one point, she looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "So, Elena. Ryan told me you're a writer. That's adorable. You must have a lot of time to daydream." She tilted her head, sipping her wine, her eyes gleaming with mischief. Adorable. That word stung more than any insult could. It wasn't praise, it was dismissal. Ryan chuckled softly, like he didn't notice how sharp her words were. "She's good at what she does," he said, without even looking at me. "But yeah, she tends to drift off sometimes." Drift off. As if my whole life was a pleasant distraction, not a purpose. In that moment, I felt something inside me shrink. Not from her words, but from his. Because when the person you love lets someone else belittle you, it's not silence that hurts most, it's their agreement disguised as laughter. I kept swirling my wine glass, staring at the dark red reflection. Was this love? Or a performance? Because it started to feel like one, a play where I didn't even have the leading role anymore. I was just the quiet understudy, filling in until the real star decided to return. And Ryan? He looked almost amused by the tension. Every glance between us felt like a spark he didn't want to put out. Was this his plan? To test me? To see how much I could endure before I finally cracked? My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear them anymore. Their voices faded into background noise, like a movie I didn't want to be in. But every time she laughed, every time he smiled back, it cut a little deeper. I looked around the apartment, our apartment, and suddenly everything felt foreign. The photos on the wall, the couch we'd picked together, even the air felt borrowed. It was like I was watching someone else live my life while I sat on the sidelines, waiting to be noticed. I started asking myself questions I wasn't ready to answer. Why was I still sitting there? Was it pride, that foolish, stubborn need to look unbothered? Or was it fear, the kind that whispers, if you speak, you'll lose him completely? Because that's the thing about humiliation, when it's quiet, it doesn't break you all at once. It seeps in slowly, until it becomes part of you. Maya's words grew sharper. Her compliments turned to comparisons. Her tone, syrupy sweet but laced with something cruel, kept drawing Ryan back into memories that had nothing to do with me. "Remember that summer in Miami?" she said, laughing, brushing her hair back. "You were obsessed with those street tacos. We ended up eating them 3 nights in a row." Ryan smiled, that same, nostalgic smile I hadn't seen in months. And I realized, she wasn't just here for dinner. She was here to remind him of who he used to be, before me. And I was here to watch. I tried to steady my breath. Tried to keep my composure. But my hands were trembling under the table again, and I could feel that familiar lump in my throat, the one that always showed up when I was trying too hard to be strong. I kept my eyes on my plate, nodding as if everything was fine, even though inside, something was splintering. The room felt smaller. Hotter. The air too heavy to breathe. She leaned forward at one point, smiling sweetly, and said, "You know, Ryan always loved women who could challenge him. Keep him on his toes. I guess you're different." Different. The word echoed. Not better. Not worse. Just less. I smiled, the kind of smile that takes effort. The kind that hides heartbreak behind composure. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I guess I am." She looked at me, her eyes glinting like she'd won something I didn't even realize I was competing for. And Ryan, he didn't say a word. He just stared at his glass, swirling his drink the way he used to swirl my hair around his fingers when he was still in love. That's when I started wondering, when did we stop being a we? When did I become the background to his unfinished story with her? It was strange. The more I sat there, the less I felt like I belonged. The laughter, the glances, the unspoken words, all of it felt like they were speaking in a language I'd never learned. And still, I stayed. Because walking away felt like surrender. And I wasn't ready to lose him, not yet. Then, as I reached for my glass, Maya leaned in, close enough for me to smell that same familiar perfume. Her voice dropped to a whisper, soft enough that only I could hear. "Tell me, Elena," she said, her smile never fading. "Do you ever worry he still dreams about me?" My heart froze. Her words weren't loud, but they were devastating. Because in that single whisper, she didn't just question his loyalty, she shattered my illusion of security. I looked at her, my lips trembling, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I realized, she wasn't asking for an answer. She already knew it. I thought the worst was over. Until Maya leaned in and whispered those words that burned into my mind. And that was the night I stopped trusting silence. Her whisper cut through the soft hum of the music, slicing straight into my chest. "You know he still calls me when he's drunk, right?" For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Everything around me blurred, the clinking of glasses, the faint candlelight, even the slow jazz playing in the background. It all faded. All I could hear was that. My fingers went cold. My smile, the one I'd been wearing all night like armor, faltered. Just for a heartbeat. But that was enough. Because Ryan noticed. He glanced at me, that familiar smirk tugging at his lips, as if to say, "Don't make a scene." Then he chuckled lightly, waving his hand. "She's joking, babe. Don't take her seriously." His tone was playful, dismissive, but his eyes told another story. They didn't look shocked. They didn't look offended. They looked guilty. And in that instant, I realized, it wasn't the lie that hurt. It was the ease with which he told it. Maya leaned back, sipping her wine like she hadn't just dropped a bomb at our dinner table. "Oh, come on, Ryan," she said, smiling coyly. "Don't act like you haven't. You called me 2 weeks ago, remember? You couldn't sleep." He froze for half a second, then laughed. A forced, uneasy laugh. "Yeah, sure, Maya. Keep telling stories." But she didn't flinch. She just smiled, slow and satisfied. The air between them was electric, charged with something I couldn't touch but could feel. Something that made my stomach twist. I laughed too, soft, polite, the kind of laugh you use to fill silence when everything inside you is screaming. But I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs, hard enough to make my body shake. Maya leaned toward him again, scrolling through her phone. "Do you remember this night?" she said, turning the screen toward him. On it, a picture. The two of them. At the beach. His arm around her waist. Both of them smiling like the world didn't exist beyond that moment. He grinned when he saw it, grinned. Oh wow, that night. Yeah, that was something. Something. My throat tightened. I looked down at my plate, pretending to be busy cutting food I couldn't even swallow. Every word that followed became a blade, small, precise, cutting deeper each time. Their old jokes. Their shared looks. The ease in their voices when they talked about then. And the way mine trembled when I tried to join in about now. I wanted to get up. I wanted to scream. But I stayed seated, smiling through the humiliation, because walking away felt like losing. My chest felt tight, my hands clammy. It wasn't jealousy anymore, it was nausea. A slow, physical ache that crept up my spine until it reached my throat. But still, I stayed. Because I needed to see how far they would go, how much truth they'd reveal when they thought I wasn't breaking. By the time dinner ended, I could barely feel my legs. Maya stood up first, brushing her hair back like she owned the place. "Thanks for dinner," she said sweetly. It was nostalgic. Nostalgic. A word that didn't belong in my home. I started clearing the plates, desperate to keep my hands busy. But she followed me, of course she did. Leaning on the counter, pretending to help. She handed me the empty wine glasses one by one, her smile still flawless, her perfume wrapping around me like smoke. And then she said quietly, "You're sweet, Elena." Really? I hope he doesn't hurt you the way he hurt me. My fingers tightened around the glass until I thought it might shatter. I looked up, meeting her gaze. Her expression was unreadable, half pity, half triumph. I wanted to ask what she meant. But the words got stuck in my throat. Because I was afraid of the answer. Ryan came up behind us, sliding his hand into his pocket like he was bored. "I'll walk you out," he said to her. Simple. Casual. No glance at me for permission, no question, just a decision. Maya smiled, picking up her purse. Always the gentleman. And then they were gone. The door closed, and the sound echoed through the apartment like a verdict. I stood there, frozen, surrounded by the faint smell of her perfume and the quiet hum of the refrigerator. After a moment, curiosity, or maybe masochism, pulled me toward the balcony. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I saw them. They were standing by her car, the night air wrapping around them. She said something I couldn't hear, and he laughed, that soft, familiar laugh that used to be mine. Then she stepped closer. Too close. And he didn't move away. Her hand went to his arm. He leaned in, not enough to kiss, but close enough that I could feel the heat from here. And then they hugged. Not a polite, goodbye hug. But a long, slow, familiar one. One that said, "We've done this before." My chest tightened so hard it hurt to breathe. I gripped the railing until my knuckles went white. That hug lasted too long. Too comfortable. Too real. And yet, I said nothing. Because silence still felt safer than truth. That night, I thought the worst thing was watching him hold her again. But I was wrong. The worst part came later, when I realized he never truly let go. It was almost midnight when I heard the key turn in the lock. The sound felt like thunder in a quiet room. Ryan walked in, calm, unbothered, like nothing had happened. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, his hair a little messy, and the faint smell of her perfume lingered on him. That same floral scent that had filled our home hours earlier. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched him move, watched him toss his keys on the table, slip off his shoes, and reach for a drink like this was just another night. He caught me staring. "What?" he said, his voice lazy, casual. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You were gone a while." He shrugged, pouring whiskey into a glass. "I was just walking her to her car." I smiled, tight, brittle. "For 3 hours?" He froze mid-sip, then gave a dry laugh. "Elena, come on. Don't start." That tone, the one that made me feel small, ridiculous, emotional, hit harder than his words ever could. He set the glass down and leaned against the counter, watching me like I was some problem he had to solve. "You're being paranoid again," he said. "You always do this. You twist things." My chest burned. Because in that moment, I realized this wasn't the first time he'd said that. And every time he did, I'd believed him. I took a step closer. You invited her here, Ryan. You let her talk down to me in my home. You let her sit in front of me and relive your past while I sat there pretending not to notice. And now, my voice cracked. Now you smell like her. He blinked, then smirked, that cruel little curl of his lip that always meant he'd already decided I was wrong. You're being insecure, he said quietly. You've been distant lately, Elena. I thought maybe if you saw we were just friends, you'd stop imagining things. My jaw tightened. So you invited your ex to prove that? He shrugged. I wanted you to trust me. I laughed, sharp, bitter, hollow. Trust you? I repeated. You didn't want trust. You wanted control. He tilted his head, the smirk fading. Control? I nodded, the tears finally spilling over. You wanted to see how far I'd bend before I broke. You wanted to know if I'd sit there and smile while you handed me pieces of my own heartbreak to hold. He said my name softly, Elena, but I cut him off. No. You don't get to say my name like it means something. You don't get to play innocent after humiliating me in front of her. You wanted to see if I'd get jealous? Congratulations. I took a shaky breath. You got what you wanted. Silence. He looked at me, searching for something. Maybe regret. Maybe fear. But I saw neither. Instead, he rolled his eyes and muttered, You're overreacting. That was it. The final crack. Something inside me, something I'd been holding together for months, finally snapped. I stepped back, the tears drying on my skin, replaced by something colder. I looked around our apartment, the framed photos, the memories, the tiny pieces of us scattered across every shelf. And for the first time, none of it felt like home. I whispered, You know what's funny? I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I finally saw myself the way she saw me. He frowned. What does that even mean? It means, I said, my voice trembling but firm, I saw myself shrinking, becoming small enough to fit into the space you gave me. And tonight, I realized that space was never meant for love. It was meant for power. He stared at me, silent, maybe shocked. Maybe not. I picked up my bag from the couch, the one I'd packed quietly while waiting for him to come home. The air felt heavy, but my heart, for the first time in months, felt lighter. He called out, Elena, don't walk away. But I was already halfway to the door. I turned back once, just once, and said, You wanted to see if I'd get jealous. But you never expected me to walk away instead. Then I closed the door. And as it clicked shut behind me, I didn't hear his voice. I didn't hear footsteps. Just silence. And for the first time, that silence didn't hurt. It healed. If you've ever been tested in love, if someone ever made you question your worth, you'll understand her pain. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe to Stories by TE for more real, raw stories of love, betrayal, and finding yourself again. The cafe where they meet is the same one where Ryan first told her he loved her. Back then, every sound, the hiss of the espresso machine, the soft music, felt romantic. Now, everything feels too loud, too real. Elena sits across from him, her fingers wrapped tightly around her cup, the warmth anchoring her in the present. Ryan talks, fast, rehearsed, about regret, nostalgia, confusion. He uses words like we and us, but every sentence feels like it's built on ashes. You're still the one I want, he says softly, eyes searching hers. You're just colder now. Elena's lips twitch into something between a smile and a sigh. Colder, she repeats. No, Ryan. Just clearer. She looks at him, really looks, and realizes he isn't a mystery anymore. He's just a man who confuses attention for affection, control for care. Maya had once called him a habit she couldn't quit. And now Elena understands, she had been addicted to, but not to him. To the version of herself she thought she needed to be to keep him. Ryan reaches out, placing his hand over hers. But she doesn't flinch. She doesn't pull away either. She simply looks down at his fingers, familiar, but foreign now. There's no electricity left. Just history. You said I loved too quietly, she says finally. Maybe. But at least I know how to love without cruelty. She stands up, the chair scraping softly against the floor. Ryan blinks, confused, as if she's ending a story he didn't realize was already over. Elena, wait, he says, voice cracking. So that's it? She pauses. No, she replies gently. That's enough. And she leaves, not in anger, not in drama, but in peace. Because some exits don't need a slam, just silence, steady and final. I used to think the worst kind of betrayal was another woman. But I was wrong. The real betrayal was convincing myself that pain was proof of love. Elena walks down the street, wind tugging at her hair, city lights blurring like fading memories. For the first time in months, she doesn't check her phone. She doesn't wait for his name to appear. She doesn't replay the dinner, or Maya's smirk, or the perfume that lingered too long. Instead, she breathes, deeply, freely. Because healing isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the sound of your own footsteps walking away from what once destroyed you. He wanted to see how strong I was. I hope he's watching now. Some love stories end not with betrayal, but with awakening. Subscribe